My name's David Whitt, but a lot of people call me Coach Whitt or Mr. Whitt in my local community. And I love the game of golf. Now, where I am different is that I coach 4 sports in middle school, or 3 sports in middle school and 1 sport in high school. So the 3 sports I coach, I'm the head coach at the 2nd largest middle school in the state of Washington for football. I coach B boys basketball the very next season. The very following season, I help organize matches and for wrestling, for boys and girls wrestling. And I help lead other coaches in that sport. And then my final season is varsity high school girls golf, which I will never leave because of the amount of scholarship opportunities for girls around the country in the game of golf due to unfair stereotypes. Now, the reason you want to follow along is that my unique experience level gives me the opportunity to show you how you can translate that age of 11, 12, 13, 14 years old when kids are starting sports for their very first time because they found an interest and learning how to build their game up. And you can apply that to how you learn the game of golf. Because here's what happens. A lot of people in the United States learn their very first sport, and it's either a football, and those sports, or wrestling, and those can be very physically intense. And eventually what happens is your lifetime runs out on those sports. For a majority of us, like in football, by that senior year of high school, that sport is over. And then you go into your family world, your career world, and you miss that level of competition. Well, here's what I do know. What I do know is you will see the game of golf grow from the ages of 25 to 40 and even 40 plus. How do I know this? On Saturdays, I started coaching lessons, and a majority of the people I started teaching lessons to were actually above the age of 40. And the other half was below the age of 18. Very few 21 to 25-year-olds were who I was giving lessons to. It was people on a senior discount or people that would be considered a middle school to high school student. And that's still true today. So what's interesting to me is that both age groups are very different in how they want to learn how to play a game. I'll give you one example. One example is that kids will have the ability to make a ton of mistakes and not ask a lot of questions. Like whiff the ball, you give them like little swing thought or swing change, like we try it, and they don't really get upset. But if I give a swing thought or a swing tip to an adult, they're going to ask me 5 to 6 questions before they ever even attempt to try. So the interesting part for me, and I think why you should follow this channel, is I can show you some of those skills that I use in coaching middle school sports and coaching the game of golf that I have learned over time on how you should reframe your mind to learn the game of golf as someone who's older. You see, the thing we forget is we get so interested or like fearful of embarrassment or judgment as adults that what happens is that you're afraid to try or play again like you were a kid when you first learned those original sports that you had learned. You forget the time that you were out on the basketball court when you couldn't dribble. You forget the time where you stepped up to catch a ball with your dad in the front yard and you threw the ball right at your face on purpose and it hit you in the nose. You forget the time that your dad pushed you off the curb to ride a bike and you started pedaling and you fell on your face 5 times before you learned. Instead, you just want to advance so quickly to the part where I know what I'm doing and I understand it that you forget the process of learning how to play a game the right way. So a lot of the messaging that I will be putting out there is what kids do when they learn a game and how we should actually learn from them as adults when we start learning the game of golf. My golf team's a great example of this. When I took over my golf team in high school, I had 2 returning golfers. They had not been coached about a ton in mindset yet or how to think about the game of golf, which is where I leaned into. But what I knew is I had to start finding girls to come out and learn the game of golf in a very male-driven sport. So I found my best group of 8th graders that were in my middle school and invited them out 2 times a week over the summer for tater tots. And over that summer, they're like, well, Mr. Whitt, golf, Coach Whitt, Mr. Whitt, golf seems kind of boring. But in reality, we got them out there 2 times a week. And I'll never forget that very first day of just trying to teach them how to grip a club, hold the club in their hand, try to be like golf instructor like I'm trying to teach a certain style of swing, and quickly realized that was never going to work. And Instead, what I did is I put a bunch of golf balls down, gave them the basic grip, basic posture, basic setup, and I showed them where to hit the ground to hit the ball first. And then we spent 1 to 2 weeks hitting it off of a tee, trying to hit the ground past the ball. And all of a sudden, they started hitting some contact with a lot of whiffs in between. And that didn't matter because as a group of friends, they were enjoying the company of being around each other. And they also enjoyed the frustration of missing the ball in their mindset of like, I'm going to get good at this, but I realize it's going to take some time. And we showed up 2 days a week over that summer. By the end of that summer, we started to hit the ball a little bit in the air. And by that next spring, after that summer, they came back after winter, and I put them on the most difficult golf course for their very first varsity match in their very first 18-hole round. They got out there with 0 expectations. The whole idea was there's no expectations. You're just going out here to get experience. We'll talk about it after. That day I saw tears, and I saw laughing, and I saw enjoyment, and I saw community. What happened was they went out there, they played the course, and we came back in and we used something that I do in the classroom called Circle, where we ask 3 questions. What was hard today? What did you do well today? And what could you do mentally better the next time you play? And that's became a staple of our golf team. And what was shared was laughing, frustration, and every emotion that you might go through as an adult human being. But then there was also the process of those mistakes are okay. I'm in the learning process. I get to try again tomorrow. And the most interesting part is by the very next year, that same group of girls won 2 league tournaments for the first time in school history and went to the state tournament where they were projected to take 11th out of the 12 teams that make it to state. Instead, they made the cut and finished 8th in state that year. Now, what's interesting to me about that is the only thing we ever focused on with that group was not the result, but was the process of moving on from our mistakes and being okay with playing the game and enjoying each other's company. So as adults, when you're asking questions, afraid of judgment and afraid of being embarrassed, maybe instead what you should do is realize, for right now, that you get to be outside for 4 hours with a group of friends and find the very easiest way to play this game that's going to stop you from being so frustrated. It's going to stop you from getting mad at the game and going to stop you from giving up hope that you can be a golfer. I remember what it was like when you were a kid to learn how to ride a bike until you never thought about riding that bike anymore because you could just do it. Or to learn how to dribble a basketball because the very first time that basketball was hard to dribble, and then eventually you could just pick up a ball and start dribbling. But then you remember you had that offhand, right? Like advanced level. Learning with your offhand was hard. And then eventually if you did both and you worked on both, you could dribble with both hands. Or catching a baseball with your dad or mom in the front yard, and the very first time they threw it at you, it hit you in the nose. And then eventually you were trying to throw the ball as hard as you could at your friends across from you, knowing that you're going to catch that baseball. All of this is true on how we learn how to play sports, but what we forget as adults is that mindset that the kid has and the ability for them to make mistakes. And so what I want you to learn from this channel is different mindsets that you can use in the game of golf as an older adult that will help ease you in the transition of learning how to play the game so that you can have fun and you can do it the right way without feeling the judgment, without feeling like I'm holding everyone up, because that's a big deal, pace of play. I'm not even sure we're right about this and how we approach pace of play in golf today, and not feeling the embarrassment of whiffing a golf ball or topping one, which, by the way, sometimes even like scratch golfers can do the exact same thing. They catch the hosel sometimes and hit a hosel rocket. They chunk one and they miss 3-foot putts. Just ask Rory McIlroy. So if they can do it, you can definitely have those same mistakes. The problem is making sure those mistakes don't affect your value as a human being as you're going through the learning process. Because one thing about kids, especially middle school kids, is when they lose or they make that mistake, it literally does not matter 5 minutes later. That's my favorite thing about coaching middle school kids. Once you teach them it's not about wins and losses and that mistakes are okay as long as you keep up with the belief to improve yourself the very next time you get a chance to do it, or that mindset of, well, I made a mistake this time, but next time I'm going to learn from that and get 1% better, you will see teams take off in sports For example, as a head coach of middle school football, my record is 62-15. I don't really keep track of scores, stats, or anything like that, and I don't care if we lose by 65. I cannot control the athletes that show up every year to play middle school football with a team that has no cuts. But what I can control is teaching every kid on my team how to learn to just be slightly improvement focused. Like, if we can drop the idea of wins and losses, drop the idea that my ego or my personality is attached to whether I win or lose. As you improve, the wins will start to show up. Now, the interesting thing for me was I have been teaching this now for 12 years. I have been a head coach for nearly half my life at this point. And the most interesting thing right now that I had to learn for myself as an adult was to take the same advice that I give to middle school students and use it to improve my own life. And so what I started to do was started to get 1% better on how I take care of myself. And along that same journey, the same things that I teach my middle school kids, I've lost weight. I've gained a lot of my health back. It's not perfect. It's not even close yet. I try to experience new things that are going to challenge my brain or challenge my mind on a daily basis. And that is what has changed. That is how I've lost weight. That's how I've become a better coach, a better teacher, a better father. It was just that same idea that I've been teaching to middle school kids for the last 15 years. It truly astounds me that as adults, we get so focused on the results or get so tied into the judgment of our professional lives that we forget that when we were kids, none of that truly mattered. The only thing that mattered was you going out there and trying something new and learning, and your parents loved you for anything that you had a passion about as long as it was productive to becoming a better human being. The issue is in golf is that a majority of golfers start as adults, but they don't learn the way they did when they were a kid in their original sports. And I know there's a bunch of you out there today that still would like to compete in their sport, guaranteed, because you miss that feeling of the competition, you miss that feeling of the camaraderie, you miss that social aspect of having a teammate. And I know that because I see how many people are joining the game of golf, getting in their first tournaments, even if it's playing in a simple scramble company tournament, and trying to do their best like when they were a kid. So I want you to remember this going forward. I'm going to make a channel that's going to continue to teach adults that are learning the game of golf, and kids for that matter, because it's the same principles. We're just reminding people, be process driven, work on getting a little bit every day, and then give yourself the freedom as a human being to truly experience the failures and the mistakes of the learning process. And then take that as a positive instead of a negative. And what you will see about yourself is you will grow so much quicker in learning the game of golf. You will grow so much quicker as a human, and you will see the successes that come from all of those things. I'm Coach Whitt. The channel's Coach Whitt for Sports, because truly, when the school year starts, I coach every single day of the school year until the very last sport is complete. My year's never over. On Saturdays, I help teach beginners how to play the game of golf, which is a 6-day-a-week work week during the school year. I love what I do. I have a passion for seeing people improve. And if you'd like to follow along with this channel, I think you might learn a few things along the way. Because I don't know of very many coaches that coach 4 sports seasons throughout the school year, maybe in the country. And it's been interesting for me along the way. And if you truly don't think I can do this, I do want you to think about one thing. For a living, I teach 7th grade middle school students, and I coach 7th and 8th grade middle school students in 3 sports. And then I coach a girls' high school golf team where we've become so close. I've also learned how to manage the differences between high school and middle school students. Now this past year, I started teaching lessons. Now I'm learning about how to coach these adults. And I will tell you one thing, some of you adults have the most to learn about learning a sport right now.